Welcome to the Strange Rainbows podcast, episode 2, Welcome. Hi, welcome stranger. You are welcome here. There is no evil in this place. Let's continue our story as the dreamer heads into the mysterious garden. Midnight Garden. Our dreamer had followed a feline wisp of shadow out of the grey town, through the fairy door and into an ancient forest. It had led them across a wild meadow and into a large garden, and what they found in there led them on a strange journey indeed. And that is where our story continues today. The path was bordered by a chaotic jumble of bushes, small trees, rock gardens and hedgerows. A wide variety of plants and wildflowers grew, and some areas were barren and unplanted. The garden was a mess. Wooden signs with images burned into them led off down side paths. An ornate bench under a leafy tree, an oak with a cave entrance under it, a wooden bridge over a still dark pool, a rough stone circle, and one with a skull and crossbones next to some jagged-looking, maybe poisonous plants. They passed the sound of running water and caught the scent of the sea and herbs. The undergrowth rustled as small animals moved through, unseen. Soon enough the path led them to a clearing, shaded by the large ragged tree. It wasn't even clear what kind of tree this was, some mix of oak, ash and thorn perhaps. Its jagged branches stuck out in all directions, and there were different leaves and berries. A dark-tailed squirrel hung upside down on the trunk, watching them. Near the tree was a cosy-looking campfire, and arranged around it were 2 colourful chairs of painted wood and a low table. A boy poked the fire with a blackened stick, and a shower of bright sparks rose into the nighttime air. Sitting on the arm of one of the chairs was a scruffy calico cat, who turned to hiss at the dreamer as they approached. The boy turned around. He was maybe a dozen years old, with bright electrical blue eyes, messy brown hair, and a serious face, wearing a blue hoodie and jeans. He smiled shyly at the dreamer and spoke. "Hi, welcome stranger. You are welcome here. There is no evil in this place." The greeting had a weight to it, almost like the boy was invoking a spell or ritual. As the last word echoed with a sense of finality, the dreamer did feel safe, like they would come to no harm here unless they caused it, and they could even dare to be themselves. "I'm glad you made it through. I'm so not used to hosting. Come in, let's get you seated and sorted, and then we can chat. Here, I saved you a cozy spot by the fire. Would you like to sit?" He gestured at a rainbow-painted chair. It was curved like a lazy laid-back S, so when the dreamer sat, it felt like they sunk back into it. The chair had broad arms, ideal for resting a drink on. "The house is a real mess right now. That's why I made the garden, although that's a bit rough around the edges too. You're always welcome to visit. It's supposed to be a help-yourself cafe, but since it's your first time here, I'll play host. Then just help yourself to whatever you need when you visit again, and if you like, you can help around the place a bit if we get some new guests. There's plenty needs doing in the garden. Would you like something to drink?" The dreamer did feel rather thirsty and nodded. On offer were different teas, coffee of course, and a range of cool drinks. They opted for a herbal tea. The boy turned to the table and took some herbs out of a small carved wooden box, put them into a pot, and hung a brass kettle over the fire to heat up some water. The scruffy cat hissed at him. He stroked its head carefully, and it nuzzled against him. "Ah, sorry. She says we should introduce ourselves. This is Bramblepaw. She rescued me, but that's a story for another day. And I'm the old storyteller. Am I? I wonder if I'm a teller of old stories or an old teller of stories. Maybe both. You can call me Blue if you like. What's your name?" The dreamer introduced himself and started asking the questions they were burning to ask. "Where am I? And how did I get here? I was following a black cat, and it asked me a question that made no sense. Is the cat here? Am I dreaming?" "Well, you're here in the garden cafe. It's a safe place to be while we talk of ghosts and other strange things, or just sit quietly by the fire. It sounds like it was Scarl you met. He does like to ask confusing questions. You followed him in through a fairy door, right? He must have led you in safely, because here you are. He might be around here in one of the shadows, or maybe he's moved on about some other business. He's making the most of his last few lives." The dreamer noticed that Blue hadn't answered whether they were dreaming, and was about to ask again, but the tea was made and handed over, and there were snacks to choose from. They sat back in their chair with a mug of tea on one of its arms and a bowl of snacks on the other, and stretched out their legs. They took a cautious sip of the tea. Its blend of piquant and more subtle herbs tasted rather refreshing. That distracted them for a moment, and they started to relax and think about adding some more chairs to the garden cafe, and maybe a quiet nook for reading. Nearby, the ragged tree was smaller than they'd thought, and now it seemed strange that they could see it as they walked in. Some branches had scraggly leaves, and one had a small paper ribbon draped over it. The dreamer felt a strange yearning when they looked at this tree, and somehow knew it watched over and protected them, and might even grant a wish if they asked it nicely. The fire cast a warm glow over the garden, and above it unknown stars twinkled in the night blue sky. It felt like being in an oasis of light in the Garden of Night. There was just enough light to see clearly, but the shadows gave it a magical air. The wood in the fire crackled, and small red-orange flames danced. There you go. It's cozy to stare into the hearth fire, isn't it? It's a storytelling fire too, you know. We can tell each other stories as we sit around it if we want. The right kind of fire has the energy to warm us all. This place is so... said the dreamer, trailing off, not quite finding the right word amongst all the cosy, safe, and intriguing impressions. Thank you, smiled Blue. I was aiming for something like that. He settled back into the blue chair, and Bramblepaw jumped onto his lap, demanding attention. He stroked her head, and she settled, purring quietly. I think a space doesn't need a house to be welcoming. For me, Bramblepaw is my home place. Wherever she is, I feel at home. Maybe it's somewhere different for you, or some special park, cafe, or other place. I've often felt at home in a library, or in a certain corner of a special park. I was just writing a poem about feeling welcome at home. Would you like to hear it? Asked Blue uncertainly. The dreamer nodded absently, lost in the dancing of the flames, thoughts drifting pleasantly. Above them the stars sparkled with pastel rainbow colours, and the warmth of the fire lulled them into a drowsy half-sleep. Blue looked surprised that the dreamer hadn't immediately said no, quickly pulled out a small notebook from the wooden box, and started to read. Welcome home. It is true that I grew in an unwelcome home, and that most of the time I felt mostly alone. When I wasn't, I feared an attack or intrusion, a cold-hearted sneer or some other exclusion. And it set me to walking a path that's been rough as I stumbled along feeling never enough, always pushing away those who wanted to care, till I'm left on my own and belonging nowhere. Many houses have kept me unsafe or apart, because a home is a place that has love in its heart, and it's cats that for me turn a house to a home, one that cares to make welcome my strange polychrome. So I welcome you in for some tea in the garden. If I'm not a good host, then I'm begging your pardon. You're welcome to visit me here any time. I just hope you don't mind the occasional rhyme. Let us tell tales of heroes, adventures and lies, and accept all our truths as our dreamings drift by. On enchantment we'll fly with the fairies so free, and if we may be strange, then its strangers will be. Just last week I was lying alone in my bed, feeling sad when I felt my arms hug me instead. Quite unbidden, I said to myself, I love you, which I never expected from out of the blue. It felt like it was telling me, welcome back home. If I'm home in myself, then I'm never alone. And then I can give welcome to other folks too, 'cause I'm welcome at home. I can share it with you. Thanks for listening to my poem. That really happened with the hug, by the way. Since then, some of the cats in the house have been less skittish, and even Bramblepaw bites me less. It's like they're telling me they welcome me here, now that I'm finally ready to hear it. Blue looked over at the dreamer, who had also fallen asleep, and carefully lifted Bramblepaw off his lap. She complained with a meow, but slept on. He put the empty mug and snack bowl on the table, and carefully covered the dreamer with a patchwork quilt, threw a new log on the fire, and stared out into the midnight darkness beyond the garden. Soon it would be time to venture out there again, into the land of fey dangers and adventure. But that was a story for another day. We had at least a couple of cats in the story, maybe more prowling through the bushes. If they're going to keep popping up, it's probably a good idea to try and understand them better, so let's have a first look in our research file. The Allura Files 1. What is cat? Let's open the Allura Files with the most basic question of all. What is cat? It's a big question, and I could probably do a whole series just trying to answer it and exploring all the fractal areas it connects to. Maybe that's what I am doing. Let's start exploring it today and see how far we get. Maybe your first answer is, it's my Tiggy, Felix or Meowface, the kitty living with me and keeping me company, getting up to mischief and who I live to care for. And you'd not be wrong. I'm happy for you if you live with cats. A cat turns a house into a home, filling it with life and welcome. My definition of cat is the perfect mixture of cuteness and claws. Let's come back to that at the end and see if it holds up or if I need to change it at all. Here's an old definition from the OED in 1889. A well-known carnivorous quadruped, Felis domesticus, which has long been domesticated, being kept to destroy mice and as a house pet. There's a lot to unpack even in that short definition. First we have well-known, and it's true enough that cats are familiar to us because they often live with or near us like dogs, rabbits, fish, and spiders. Carnivorous is an important part of who they are. They're meat-eaters and hunters. Quadruped, fair enough, many of them have 4 paws and a tail. Has long been domesticated. That's known as far back as at least 10,000 years in the so-called Near East, notably in Egypt, where they were quite rightly venerated as gods, just as they are by many of us today. Being kept to destroy mice, that sounds brutal, but it is something farm cats have as their day job, or maybe night job, and as a house pet, and that's where we circle back to our Tiggy. If you look at the taxonomy of all life, cats are carnivorous mammal animals of the order Felidae. That splits down into the Pantherinae, or big cats, and the Felinae, or small cats, aka felines. Those two split off from each other about 11 million years ago. The small cats can purr, but not roar. We'll get on to cat communications another time. Let's stick with the cat family for now. So the small cats split off into Felis, among others, and under that is Felis catus, our domestic cats. So from cats down to kitty is Felidae, Felinae, Felis, Felis catus. That's the same as Felis domesticus in the OED definition. I might have named it Kittius catius, or kitty cat. So we have raw cats and purr cats, wild cats and house cats. But even house cats were only domesticated about 10,000 years ago, so they are still in essence wild hunters who've learned to tolerate us. You can see the wildness right from the kittens playing, learning to stalk, leap and paw at their siblings. It's all training for the hunt. Scientifically, we have to look at how cats are built to start understanding some of their abilities. They're built to stalk, chase and kill. Sharp extendable claws for grabbing and slicing. Long incisor teeth for biting into an animal's neck to break its spine, whether it's big game or a tiny mouse, or an unwary human who wasn't kind to cats. So that's part of who cats are. We let wild animals into our homes, and we love them. That really impacts their psychology as well, as they're territorial, very aware of what's going on around them and where the places to hunt and hide are, and cautious in their approach in case of danger. We'll have a closer look at how cats are built and what abilities that gives them in a future file. Just to mention that some of those abilities are incredible balance, jumping great distances, climbing straight up walls, sprinting and hiding, turning in midair to fall on their feet, seeing in the dark, and of course being able to see and communicate with ghosts. I'd like to try and explore what the essence of cat is as well, because they're not just one thing. It seems to me cats live completely in the moment, aware of what's going on around them with their special senses, but also discriminating what they pay attention to. And maybe sometimes that's just not us. Humans see humans, dogs see humans, and cats see whatever they feel like seeing. There's a reason why cats don't go to training school. They're not interested. It's not in their nature. Cats are savage, wild beasts and stealthy with it, and if you're not on their wavelength, it's hard to predict what they'll do. If you approach them intrusively, of course they feel attacked, and it can lead to scratches or bites. I think that's why some people are afraid of them. They're independent and need their space and autonomy, but they're not malicious. I approach cats by talking softly to them and stretching out my hand towards them, but not shoving it in their face, so they can decide if they want to approach or not. Cats are playful, and if you find the right game, they can really enjoy that hunting instinct their whole lives, not just as a kitten and youngling. Cats I've lived with have most enjoyed low-tech toys and games, like chasing after string, leaping to paw at scrunched-up paper balls I throw over them, or pouncing on a foot moving underneath the bedclothes. And when they're climbing up to get a treat or explore somewhere, or just be on top of something to keep an eye on things, they have the agility and stealth of a master ninja. There's nothing like the purr of a cat to comfort you if you have a sadness on you. A purring cat on your lap and everything else seems not half as bad. It can feel very affirming when a cat accepts you. And they're so cute. Have you ever held a tiny kitten in your hand? So adorable. Cute as kittens. Cats can be the catalysts that change your life, just like Scarl was for the dreamer, or Bramblepaw was for Blue. And yet there's something else, isn't there? If you're a cat person, you know what I mean. There's something unknowable about a cat, some aspect of them that can never be truly comprehended or catalogued by human science. They're deeply engaged in the moment and in their nature, and yet there's something more than natural about them. It seems to me that cats have such highly developed senses they can see ghosts, and are so stealthy they can travel through shadows. And then there are the things we can't know, like where they go when they travel through the shadows, or what they're doing while they dream, or what they're thinking when they watch over us. Cats have supernatural senses and an aura of supernatural mystery. Maybe that's the essence of cat. I'm going to have to update my definition after all, so now it is a mysterious mixture of cuteness and claws. So, and that is cat. We'll close the Allura files for today and leave it to future files to explore other aspects, like cats and folklore, breeds, senses, abilities, and communication. Until then, let's enjoy any time we get to spend with our mysterious mixtures of cuteness and claws. Thanks for listening today. I wanted to start with a step through the fairy door as a bridge into fantasy and the garden cafe as a safe place to tell scary stories. Maybe you have a favourite garden or cafe and that's what you see in your mind's eye when you imagine it. I'm sure we'll return to the cafe again sometime. I guess the poem was a bit dark, but I think there was a spark of hope in there too. I didn't want to just list scientific facts in the Allura files. I like exploring things, and my definition really did change as I was writing it. What's your definition of cat? Please enjoy the creepy classic ghost story on Patreon. It's free for anyone to listen to, just like last week's Dreamful Poems. Next week, we'll be exploring the theme of strange with a poem, some musings, and the story of the strangeness of Tatterlily Strangely. Have a good week. Keep yourself safe and keep yourself strange. Thanks for listening. The Strange Rainbows podcast is copyright Mike Storm 2024, all rights reserved. It is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to actual names, characters, businesses, places, events, or persons, living, dead, or imaginary, is entirely coincidental.